Hey everybody, Alex Miller at Capnion here. Today I'd like to develop a couple ideas around prompt engineering. And really just, if you're doing generative AI, you type something into it and you get something out. And sometimes the something you get out is weird. And maybe probably for whatever you wanted to use it for, it's problematic that it's weird. And just speaking very basically, square zero, what can I do? What can I understand to avoid weird stuff happening to me? I'm going to talk a little bit about text to text, which is easier storytelling. And there's roughly two lanes that seem to be picking up speed in generative AI right now. You can give it a prompt and it gives you text back. Or you can give it a prompt and it gives you an image back. And I've mostly been talking about text. I want to talk about images today. I have a particular example of an image I'll show in a second that I think is interesting for the things that went wrong with it. So to provide a bit of backstory here, as generative AI has gotten hotter, Pinterest, which I like to use a lot, has been inundated with artificially generated pictures of beautiful women. And just because I'm so intent on providing you guys with useful information, I've been collecting and analyzing these. Some of them go pretty wrong in interesting ways. You've maybe seen me talk before, and this is well known and interesting. Maybe the fingers are weird and this kind of stuff. But I want to talk about a sort of problem that's subtler. And I guess before I do, maybe once again, it's easier in the text world. You can see that in a lot of examples, maybe some other ones I discussed, it's difficult to properly tell an LLM, for example, not to do something. You can tell it to do something. It tends to be problematic to tell it not to do something. And then it's very important to remember that these widgets don't really understand what they're doing. So in the text example, its world is totally linguistic. If it appears to understand something, it's because that thing was in writing somewhere and it's essentially regurgitating that language. It doesn't really know what these things mean in the real world. All right, so check out this image. I think this is really funny. What I would like you to note in this image is that this woman seems to be filling a closet with full glasses of beer. And they've all got heads of foam on them, so they must have been poured in the past few minutes. This is kind of insane. And I should say these images are obviously targeted at men. Men like beer. It's just another way to get eyeballs. But then, it introduces a bit of what's going on in real life. And in this case, it makes absolutely no sense to be filling a closet with full glasses of beer. What do we want to read into this? This thing was created by digesting a bunch of other images. Probably at some point there were images of beautiful women with beer, and somebody somewhere noticed that the audience reacted to these more. It's doing a good job of presenting a lot of the kind of basic small details of what these things should look like. It looks like correctly like a glass of beer. It's sitting on a wooden surface. This is how glasses of beer work. There's not an image out there, and this goes back to what is this thing's world? Where is this really coming from? You can't really tell it not to do something. It's problematic, and I can't really think of one. Is there an image out there that's going to tell you somehow that this is not how society works, that you fill a closet very rapidly with full glasses of beer? There really isn't. So it's done what it knows how to do, which is glasses of beer look like this, and men like glasses of beer, and glasses of beer sit on wooden surfaces, and wooden surfaces in our closet. And there's not an image out there in its training data that's going to tell you no. So from a practical standpoint, you have to remember that I know things about real life, about where beer goes and what's likely happening in my condo, and it's not filling closets with full glasses of beer, but the widget doesn't know that, and this is how a lot of these problems work. You just can't presume that something you know about what doesn't make sense, if it's not in an image that's in the training data, or once again in the text case, if it's not in some piece of writing saying the world is like that, it's just never going to understand it, and you're going to get these weird behaviors. So I guess the final, most practical takeaway here is, I think in lots of examples I've examined, news stories about things with chatbots going bad for people, this is really, I think, one of the more interesting problems in prompt engineering. You just can't tell it really not to do something very well. It learns kind of positive things, but telling it no, and telling it no is one of the maybe more important from a risk management standpoint. It just doesn't work like that. And I'm going to keep trying to give examples because I think this is a pretty useful heuristic principle for how to think about these things and then how they can go